It's about freedom, it's about independence, it's about being able to protect yourself and not having to be a victim and not assuming society will protect you. That never should be the case, that government can't protect everybody. People have to be allowed to protect themselves, and that shows you have some confidence in the good sense of ordinary people.
Perfect example is what we saw happen in England this past summer. And the fact that here were people who were told, rely on your government, rely on your police, you don't need a firearm, and they look right at you and say, something went terribly wrong.
Well, nothing went wrong. It's what you would expect because the public was disarmed. Amazon got this rush of orders for baseball bats. The police were useless. So here they were, confronted by these thugs who were beating people up, burning houses. People were leaping from the upper floors of these buildings, to safety.
What was your reaction, knowing that you studied it so long? The history of where we got our gun rights from, which was England?
Yes.
And then to see this happen.
I didn't like to say I told you so, but I had been telling them that this was, the road that they were taking. And in fact, there's one blog that had a special feature on it, and they called it Malcolm's Moment. And I had to love that because it was what I'd been saying, that, you have to allow people to protect themselves. And then, the British people got the worst of all worlds. They weren't allowed to protect themselves, and the police were not protecting them.
When we were there during the riots, we had an older man, 90-year-old man, say to us, this is the end. There's no way back. Do you think they ever can really get their rights back?
I really hope so. I know that the conservative government actually proposed a new standard for self-defense, but of course it was immediately attacked in the liberal media as being, a return to medieval lynch law. And since that time, they've had so much else on the agenda. I'm hoping that they will stick with it. When you talk to individuals there, they are really desperate. I mean, there's so many people who've had numerous robberies in their homes, and the crime rate is really soaring there.
And as you said, it's the law-abiding that gets treated like the criminal.
Oh yeah, it's so much easier to arrest the victim. And it happens all the time. And it's only when the public makes a big outcry that something is done. For instance, there was an incident with a man named Singh who had a little shop. And at the end of the day, he was taking the income home, the money home. And he was attacked as he was getting into his car by an assailant who had a knife. And they wrestled, and in the course of the wrestling, Mr. Singh was able to stab this man with his own knife. And the police came, and they immediately arrested him, even though the person who had assailed him with a knife was a career criminal who had something like 20 convictions for assault. So they arrest Mr. Singh, and it took weeks before they decided, and a public outcry, that maybe they weren't going to prosecute him. I don't find it satisfying that at the end of the day they failed to prosecute him. It should have been obvious that this man was attacked by an armed man and was just simply defending himself. They shouldn't have arrested him to begin with. And this is not an isolated incident.
No, by
it
no
happens
means.
Quite a lot.
Yes, it does. And when you talk to the people in London, they'll say, we were the fools, the gun owners. We didn't speak in one voice. Do you think that was a big problem for them, that they were so splintered?
I think that was a really serious problem because each different type of weapon or sport had its own association. I think it's made a big difference in the United States that sport shooters and gun owners have worked together, and they've been far more effective. So in Britain, one by one, these all got eliminated.
And now it's not just guns, it's knives.
No, it's a slippery slope. It's anything you might use to protect yourself.
What do you think American gun owners should be concerned about most when it comes to a treaty like what we're seeing being pushed by the UN? And England is one of the key voices in there, wanting to make sure that civilian ownership is in that treaty, along with Mexico.
I'm really worried about it. I mean, our present administration thinks there's no problem with this treaty. I teach constitutional law, and the Constitution says that both the Constitution and treaties are the supreme law of the land. But there's an issue if we sign on to something like that. So I think that we need to be really careful to protect constitutional rights. We can't really take those for granted. I mean, we're almost alone in the world.
And when you sit in that UN and you see countries like Libya and these dictatorships, their vote counts as much as ours.
Yes, one dictator, one vote. And of course, they're happy to have these restrictions. Only they and their soldiers will be able to have guns. So they're all happily signing on. I think we have to be really very cautious about this. And I think that, we are exceptional and we need to keep in mind our special status, both for our own country and in the world.
And you bring up the Constitution, and your research played a key part in the Heller decision by the court, but when you look how narrow it was.
I was really shocked that it was a 5-4 decision, and McDonald was also, because the evidence was so overwhelming that there was an individual right, that even if judges didn't like the idea of it, there was all of this evidence. And yet, ideology and their sense of what was in the national interest trumped the evidence of what the right meant. So it's a very narrow majority, and I would hope that it would never get reversed. But I think that the American people need to be aware that's a possibility. And also, of course, even with Heller and McDonald, they're sort of nibbling away at what they meant. So I think that the people who believe that guns cause crime haven't given up yet. They're really working away.
And I think a lot of people don't remember, when they're voting for a president, they're voting for a president who's going to appoint judges to a court that's going to decide what happens with our Constitution.
And those judges are going to sit for life. They are supposed to decide things case by case impartially, but they come to the office with certain preset notions, as we saw with this 5-4 decision. The American people always overwhelmingly held to the belief that they had an individual right to be armed. And large numbers of them are.
When you look at this administration, when you look at what's going on at the UN, and all the research, all the years you've done, have you ever seen our freedoms as threatened as they are right now?
I think that they are threatened in a whole series of ways, that the Constitution is under threat. And the Constitution was developed by people who were very thoughtful and studied history and studied the way that politics works, and they gave us this great inheritance. And as Franklin said, it's a republic if you can keep it. And I think it's important that we be vigilant, or as they would have said, be jealous of your rights, And this one is an extremely important one.